you that's going to be the most interesting and relevant question when you are going out and looking for work. So, Ronald, you can start sharing your screen and then they'll introduce themselves. And please prepare questions to ask for them. They're literally here to help you today think about things, and we're quite excited to hear their story. How do I make this full screen?
Morning, everyone. Just a quick check. Glad you can see the screen, right?
Yes, you can see the screen. And remember, we're live.
Right. Hey, Michiel.
Okay, so yeah, enjoy.
Okay, so we're going to try this a little bit awkwardly, most likely. Rodney is controlling the slides on his side, and you guys are seeing me, so we have no way of actually telling which slide to go to next. So ignore us if we just mess it up.
For what it's worth, we have rehearsed this, right? So, yeah. All right, let's get going.
So what does a digital practice require? You can go to the next slide, Rodney. 40 hours a week for the next 40 years. That is kind of what the career looks like, right? So this becomes a really critical decision point around what this next 40 years are going to look like. Right? Cool. So, who am I? My name is Michiel. I run Digital Reframe, a small consulting company helping with AEC industry with their technologies and come out to think about the digital practice. And I'll give you guys the outside perspective of what's happening inside practices.
Thanks, Michiel. I'm Ronald Davey. I'm also an architect, right? Actually coming from Flats as well. I'm a manager for Citari Consulting Engineers, specifically in the built environment market. All right, so buildings, things like that. And I help not only with BIM and information governance, but also setting strategies and standards and enforcing those. And pretty much asking the questions, are we doing the right things? And then improve on this.
Yeah, Rodney's going to give you guys the inside perspective.
Without giving away any spoilers.
Cool. So the first question I normally get is, what is a digital practice? Because it sounds like this vague little talk, we know what a practice is, we know what digital is, but what are they kind of combined? Can go over. The kind of way you can look at a digital practice, it's an operational tech environment within any firm. Right? So it's not to do their specialized work. It's not really they're just encompassing of a firm that's called digital. It's not just the IT side of it, it's your operational layer of it. To go to the next slide. So kind of to give you guys a little bit of a model of what it looks like, our digital practice and what they control as managed is typically like your Revit, your AutoCAD, your BIM coordination, your computational design, any kind of software you need to do your job, to produce the outcome the client is paying for. What it is not is the IT side. It's like your emails, your hardware, your software, for kind of like Outlook. Although there is a gray area between these two digital domains, but it's understanding there is a little bit of a mental model between what is the difference of it. Sure.
Yeah, so if you want to put it into, let's say, a practical application, right? Let's take a narrative of roads versus traffic. So IT in this instance would be, the people building the roads, maintaining the roads, the traffic lights, the fuel stations, the things that people actually use. While as in this narrative, the digital practice is the decision behind where traffic should go, how it should flow, and how efficiently it should be moving, how to get to everyone from a destination faster and safer. Right, so they tie in with one another, but they serve distinct opposite purposes and how you actually get to those points.
Yeah. So IT keeps the company running, the digital practice produces the deliverables. Okay, so most of what we do, we operate within the digital practice environment.
So let's, if we're talking about the line, right, as you can see in the top of the slide. So what happens in a line? In a line, you also have various types of nodes, right? So we're referring to this thing called digital minimalism. Why minimalism? Because of the nature of our data and AI age, right? There's a lot to think of, there's a lot to have. So how do you actually make good choices or minimalize your digital identity? Well, there's three main nodes here, right, that drive digital minimalism. The one is intentionality, right? Talk about that now. The second point is value alignment, very important. And then, the third thing is basis score. So here in these little flowcharts, they're all interlinking with other. So it becomes an ecosystem, somewhat contradictory to the term minimalism in this visual, but if you stick into the three main nodes, right? Intentionality. What it means is that every tool in your workflow, right? Tool and workflow should have a specific purpose. This means you made a deliberate choice to implement that purpose to fit your workflow. So think about it this way, right? If some kind of other person or vendor pitches you a suggestion, don't just take it for face value. Actually test those things and make sure it fits your workflow. Okay. Second thing is value alignment, right? Extremely important. What is value alignment? So tools must serve the project's data outcomes, data, focus on that, not just making tasks faster. Then less is more, also, because there are so many tools out there, finding a single source of truth or an SSO as we call it helps you to not just know things on surface level, but also have insights into which tools are the correct things to use. So I'm going to quickly bring it back to the practical example, right, in a professional framework. What would intentionality be is using a tool to get a coordinated model in place, right? The value alignment is having more pre-checks, making things visible and having sets in together so you can group and clash certain things with one another so you can repeat that. Less is more, it's just about, how well are you setting up the templates. So for example, you have presets, clash sets, views, you don't have to create duplication, you can standardize things when you actually try and resolve clashes. That's an example.
A little bit of an example on the less is more principle. One of the clients I've been helping is in the previous project, the stage they were in, they were using AutoCAD to do space planning and layouts to approve that with clients. They were using ArchiCAD for 3D modeling for renderings, and then they were using Revit for the BIM deliverables. Right? Doing the same thing 3 times. So less is more, right? Just focus on one tool, we can actually create a lot of more purpose and value out of that. Okay, so digital transformation lives in the digital practice, not in IT. This is specifically more for the AEC industry, less for the broader business world, because they don't necessarily have the same principles. So when we look at transformation and how the industry needs to digitally transform, the digital practice is the biggest driver for finding the technologies that will enable that value creation for the firms and what they do and how they do their work. Okay. Cool. So we're at a BIM event. Let's name the elephant BIM, right? BIM is currently the loudest voice in the market, maybe second loudest now. AI is bigger, but you can actually use AI on Instagram, not BIM. But yeah, so BIM is one of the biggest concerns, the biggest need in the market. A lot of firms out there need more people knowledgeable about BIM, about the software technologies and everything that drives it. And the demand isn't going away at this point.
Yes, so remember, think about BIM, right, as not necessarily a model. Right? There is a misconception in the industry that BIM means model, right, something geometric. This is also true, but because of this data age and information age, think about it as modeling information, right? It's a very important shift. It's not the 3 up in this up, right? But modeling information, what goes into your file, what type of expectation does the client need? Is it serving something like a digital twin or asset maintenance? Are you required for it to drive some specification calculations in systems development for mechanical systems or whatever? So it's not just the model's output. So keep that in mind. Alright, so now we've gone from BIM, AI, capture, right?
So just to kind of Yeah, the landscape currently is what this looks like. This is just a view. It's a small, simple view of what the digital practice landscape looks like. Again, BIM is currently our center of gravity. AI is becoming arguably a bigger wave, but everyone's kind of in a flux of what it actually means for us. So there's not very, I want to say, concrete use cases for it. Reality capture has been exploding more and more. Tabella mentioned in the previous sessions, and more developers are looking at reusing existing structures and buildings. So point clouds becomes, reality capture becomes important. Computational design is a real specialization. We'll talk about that in the later session. So yeah, just kind of understand what the market is asking for, or what to look for in a digital practice where you're going towards.
Yes, so again, perhaps giving a practical example for the consultancy firm I'm looking for. The BIM or the information model would be the generator to capture all this information, right? Something like the AI, like our enterprise systems, will be used to actually then start to track and unpack these items and help to plan and manage them, even for birds or identifying specific workflows, right? So a lot of things. And then reality capture, again, ties into this whole ecosystem. You've got things to scan, you've got different ways of placing those nodes and then getting it into the ecosystem of BIM or information frameworks, and then computational design, in its own is something completely different, right? But in Centauri, for example, we've got these specialized services, and depending on your project needs, you actually reach out to these various service offerings, right? Okay, so now we've seen the landscape, right? BIM, reality capture, whatever they might be. Okay, so what's next?
Okay, so the check. The way you guys can look at it is, and again, this is from a firm's level, so you guys are looking into a firm. This is how a firm looks at how they operate. They've got a market they serve, so the types of clients they do, the types of projects. Then there's the firm itself. So I'm an architectural firm, an engineering firm, that type of thing, and then what the firm needs. So if we break it down into a little bit more steps, the market has a problem. My client needs a house, building a urban development, bridge, whatever the case might be. The firm is the people, the tools and technologies that build them. The hire is what the kind of person they need to solve that problem, and then that becomes the career. So you hire the need, the market problems, and you're shaped by that market in your next 40 years. Right? So, small example, my initial background, architecture, and that's my first few years as an industrial architect, meaning focusing on warehouses. That influenced a lot of how I see technologies, architecture, and things like that, through systemized design and processing. So that, just to give you a quick summary of how that could influence your career.
Interesting enough, in my career as well, before I moved over to the NMEs, to like to call him. Also, corporate focused, educational focused, but also classic small firm, small firms, big firms, to turnkey projects, so acting as principal agent, coordinator, QS, all those things. Now, when you're actually coming to a larger landscape, you have to be minimalized on where you spend those efforts, because there are other types of roles supplementing this smaller firm thinking, right? Okay, so we've gone through the spine, right? So what's next? Next, we've got the remaining parts of the spine, right? So first, we had a market that has problems. What do you do when you enter a company, right? So you recognize these market issues. So it means you need to notice what's going on for the company itself, right, or the market, to see what matters to them, so you can address those issues. Things like understanding the standards or the structures of information pools, or how to navigate your shared resources, right, in the market. All right, so now you've recognized the market. You're in the firm. Now what do? You assimilate, right? What does assimilation mean? It means you need to absorb everything that's being given on the plate, but then also contextualize it according to your digital practice or mindset. Right? Okay, so now I've recognized things, you've assimilated yourself. What happens next? Now you start exploiting these frameworks, right? In this instance, exploitation isn't a bad thing. It means you understand and have absorbed, and now you can exploit to improve the process of things like that, right? Okay, so what is the outcome of all these things? If you're going to step 1 and 2, and you just start exploiting with action, actually you have not having a roadmap or a clear sort of lifestyle expectation, you actually force yourself into an innovation sequence, right? It is important that all these steps follow in sequence and have the recurring effect for you to be able to assimilate and improve, right? So that's an important thing. You need to be aware of what the market is, what the firm's needs are, or its shortcomings, what you're being hired for, and then what all those factors can give you to help improve or optimize or innovate.
To give you guys a little bit of like an outside perspective of that, how it works in reality, a firm looks at their market, they start noticing patterns. So basically their clients might be starting asking questions around what is BIM, how do we use BIM? So as a firm, you start recognizing that BIM is a need, so you start bringing it in, you assimilate it, you start absorbing that, you contextualize it for how BIM works for your clients, and then you start exploiting it, you're using it to the value of the client and to the value of your firm. So that's kind of a simple way of looking at those three tiers. So once you start doing that process over and over again, you're continuously creating that innovation. So there's no real ceiling, you're constantly creating patterns, or finding patterns, recognizing them, assimilating them, and exploiting them.
So from an insider perspective, right, especially in a large firm where there are multiple markets in the building information space, it means you have to think about how you can standardize core values or rules or protocols, right, based into these frameworks, but then also be able to tailor them to specific market needs, right? Things like buildings versus transport, although they function in the same information modeling space, they follow different principles and processes, right? Energy, market sustainability, digital twins, built environment, roads, Middle East, different regions follow different ways, industrial type of thinking. Even though they use the same tool sets, they use it differently. So this is where the exploitation and the recognition of what is in front of you becomes such an important thing when you enter the firm.
Okay, so that was all just context, right? What is digital practice? How should firms look at their digital practice? Now, this is a little bit more about choosing a firm is choosing a market. So for you guys, for the next 40 years, your choices around firms is the type of market that you want to serve, that you want to help. Right? So this is just going to give you a way of how to look at it. Cool. So this is just a broad view of it. You typically get a small specialized firm in this example, or a large diversified firm. Normally, small doesn't mean specialized, but in our example it is. So when you're in a small specialized firm, you're going to really focus down on the technologies, how you do things. You're going to systemize it, you're going to operate in a specific way. When you more commonly a large diversified firm, you've got a broad market. As an example, Atari being multidisciplinary, they have a variety of types of engineers and things like that. So the market is vast, and the type of consulting they provide is also vast. If you're a small architectural firm, you might just focus on residential, you'll only do houses, but that's the specialized area you're focusing on. To understand there's a difference in how different firms want to operate.
So again, from a broad market perspective, right, the important thing is here for digital practice is scalability, validation and verification, right? What that means is making sure something is tried and tested before it goes out. You don't want to roll something out or implement a new way of thinking if you're not happy or it's been tested that it functions and serves the value the need requires for that market. Very important. Different ways of thinking about it. Speed needs to be managed and mapped. Whereas in smaller practices, speed is a bit faster.
So the question is, whose problems do you want to spend a decade solving? Okay, it sounds bad. I know every generation just moves quicker between jobs, but this is the idea I like to present, right? If you were going to a firm or you want to do a specific type of work, what will make you happy for the next decade to do that? Right? That kind of inherent enjoyment, not just having to go to a job every day. So it's just a long-term vision of it. But in reality, if you find you'll see in the previous slide, it talks about where you can grow. The question is always, that firm, going to the problems you're trying to solve, will that help you grow? So that's the kind of mindset we look at.
So these are the questions we're asking, right? So what are the gaps in the market? So don't please read that says all adoption on the graph. So there are real systemic gaps right now in the ABC market, right? And it's not bad, right? It's all opportunity, not barriers, but it is reality. So all of these new tools can be quickly adopted, but the data confidence behind them is where the lack is, right? Because things are moving so fast, how can we actually verify that these things that we're trying to use serves the purpose we need them for? So the three systemic gaps right now in the market is there's often no intentional digital strategy at burn level, right? Or in micro level as well. Okay. That's what I mentioned earlier. So it's important to know which tools serve which purposes in the market or on a roadmap, or these rolling out and being able to have data to drive metrics on how feasible these things are working. The second real systemic is up until recently, clients are not really that educated about what the things like information management really requires or needs, right? So the value of structured data has been lacking, which means the demand to pull the market forward in this information wave was lacking. This is starting to change though. Clients are becoming way more aware and data structured, specifically because information and data is the name of the game of paradigm right now. And the last systemic gap is standardization. Right, inconsistent standardization. When we're talking about digital practice, especially in a larger firm, standardization is paramount. Right, again, for scalability, it cannot be a subjective way of working, individual. But yes, having consistency and repeatability for various types of things when it comes to information or digital practice helps to prevent reinventing that wheel. Alright, so what's the result of all of this? We're having expensive tools, we've got the data, we're actually underutilizing it, teams are not actually building the velocity. We'll talk about that now. So what does this mean for you as a student? It's not a barrier, it's an opportunity for digital transformation.
So how firms think about hiring for a digital future? This is more so when a firm looks at the prospects. Okay, most times they're just trying to fill a gap because they're so over-constrained, they don't know how to solve the problem, so just trying to fill a seat as quick as possible. The intentional view of it is how they should think about it. So every firm says it's digital. I've been to all of them. Yeah, we're digital. And you kind of look at the systems and it's haphazard. Yes, everything is done on a computer, but it doesn't make it digital, right? And you need to also learn to read what they say. So this kind of level is a model done by Sheen around culture, but it's very much applicable everywhere. So you've got three tiers. Artifacts is what you see the firm does, their LinkedIn post, their posters on the wall, the kind of artifacts they actually present to you. You've got the espoused values, that is what they say, they espouse them. We are a creative firm, we are the digital firm, we are this, right? They can actually say it. Basic assumptions is the underlying thing. You need to observe them to actually see what's true about them. So the example is, what do people actually do under pressure? They can have all the right training in whatever software. If they're under pressure, they fall back to call it bad habits. That is the actual basic assumptions they live with. So these are three things you can look for in a firm to see, do they work the way I would like to work.
Yeah, so if you're taking the metaphor a little further, right, just a quick graphic of the iceberg thinking. Artifacts typically 10% in the top, right? And this is what you see. But what actually makes the iceberg float and sinks the Titanic, right? It's what happens below the surface level. Now, this is a quick infographic about culture and where it lives. So like Martin said, if there's going to be surface adoption for cultural change, right? It's going to get a new tool in one of these level ones. If level 2 and level 3 doesn't actually change, right? The process, the way of working, the best practice, the discipline, then transformation cannot really be achieved. Are you guys seeing this little window? Sorry. That's all right. So process, basic assumptions, all these things form part of the digital roadmap to help drive improved artifacts, which is the surface level vision. It's important to recognize these artifacts, where they live, and how people actually get to them. This will unlock the real opportunity for where you could steer your career into.
This is your channel.
Alright, so the 4 signals, right? There are 4 signals in the model. Here are the 4 ones. This means how does a firm behave in these 4 cultural signals, right? So the 4 cultural signals are following: intentionality versus reactivity, velocity versus speed, right? Big difference. Talk about that now. Absorptive capacity versus decision fatigue. And then the last thing is something that actually from Clay, we speak about that later, is something called a knowledge fortress versus transparent sharing of information. Right. So what does it mean? What does it mean culture for skills? Intentionality. Not something that is reactive, right? Something that is intentional. It means when you plan for digital, and someone staffs the cost for it in bids, so being intentional about actually where you're planning to go, it means you're being proactive and intentional about fighting fires. Right? So that often happens. Often it's a reactive thing, trying to extinguish a fire instead of preventing one. Let's talk about velocity. Alright, so what is velocity in comparison to speed? Learn from each project. Learn from your colleagues. Be open-minded. Reduce the waste. Right? Speed finishes means everybody's going quickly, so velocity accelerates. What this means in a team structure, right, or a big market or organic thinking is, if everybody finishes quickly, things get completed, right? But if everybody starts finishing things in tandem, you start picking up velocity, which means tasks form a cone, and everything gets completed a lot quicker. So big difference. Then absorptive capacity, right? What does that actually mean? So think about this. Absorptive capacity versus decision fatigue, right? So this often happens. Decision fatigue is when there are so many things around you and so many choices. What do I actually now do with this information? And you freeze, right? So don't just chase everything. Choose what to adopt that fits the market need, right? Or your personal digital lifestyle. Otherwise, you get overwhelmed, right? It's about your cognitive bandwidth and what you can actually retain when you learn things. The 4th point here is knowledge sharing, not a fortress. Right? So what would typically happen up until, especially in most of the world, is people retain knowledge, right? So because of this information paradigm, anybody can learn anything. So what do you actually now do with it? It's about shifting the value from hoarding information to sharing the things that makes the most sense and adds the most value. So stop hoarding and start sharing. Doesn't have to be hold on, everybody can do anything. Tailor what you want to share to make more effective.
Okay, so we're going to try something. There's a QR code. There's a limited amount of people that can do it. So if you're not first, you're not going to do it. Let's see how you have to raise your hand. Digital analog, right? Okay, so we're going to run a Mentimeter, and we're going to just give you guys a little bit of a way of testing. Can you understand those 4 principles in a market? Okay.
Yeah, so to scan the code, guys already.
We're going to take screen quickly, isn't it?
Here it is. Here it is. All right. Yeah, people's like that.
Okay. For those that haven't scanned or couldn't scan, okay, there's a QR code again. So the first question, which of the four best aligns between what they say and what they do? So let me quickly just read that to you guys. Okay. Intentionality, right? Did you guys see the questions? Because everyone's answering that's the right one. Intentionality, what the companies say, we budget dedicated hours for burn coordination on every bid. What they do, when you look at them, when you observe them, when a client added late scope last quarter, the BIM lead had to beg for hours that were never costed. Does that sound like they align? 93% said yes. Velocity, say we run retrospective after every project, so like a lessons learned or after action review. What they do is their template hasn't changed in 2 years, and nobody checked old retros before starting a new job. Does that sound aligned? Should have just done this.
But I'll do one to just read it back digital deals here just for reference.
Okay.
Right? I realized the split between PowerPoint.
Yeah. Absorptive capacity, what they say is we are selective about which tools we adopt. What they do is 5 different coordination platforms onboarded in 18 months. None of them fully rolled out. Doesn't sound aligned to me. And then knowledge sharing, what they say, everything we learn goes into a shared library. What they do, 2 junior staff pulled a template from a library last month to solve a live problem. No one had to tell them where to look. Yeah, right? It's a nice, easy way of testing. Okay, so the next question, okay, before I actually show you the next question, let me explain it to you. We've just heard the 4 failures. Right, so Ronald, maybe just keep it up there. Or the 4 kind of items. Now you need to select the one if you believe that is like a no deal for you. If a company shows that as a failure mode, you don't really want to work with them. That's what we're voting. So this is the highest thing you don't want to have in a company. Okay. What is the one of the biggest problems for you that should be aligned for you? Ronald, you can just go back to the results. I'm not seeing any results on my side.
Alright, let's go to...
Okay, so did everyone leave?
Yeah, they just gave it another scan.
Is it not showing? Okay, now it should. Is it working now? There you go. Okay, close it down again. Refresh the screen.
Refresh. There you go.
Okay, so to me it tells me one interesting thing is that we value knowledge sharing. Right, if a company is not willing to share knowledge, it's a big kind of letdown to us. Right. You can see then from this point, intentionality is becoming, okay, between absorptive capacity and intentionality as being high second rates. So we want firms that are a little bit more intentional in how they look at their processes, the technologies, all those kind of things. Absorptive capacity and how they're looking at absorbing this technology. Instead of looking at all the noise, it's rather looking at all the signals that what makes sense. Okay. Cool, thank you everyone for that messy session. Don't worry, you've got a few more minutes of us.
Yeah, let me just get that presentation quickly. Here we go. Alright. Good.
Okay, so just some 4 questions. So when you guys are in an interview with a company, here's some 4 questions, ideas that you can use to kind of try and extract that information from a company. Okay. Cool, we can carry on.
Just have a quick read, right? Alright, everybody had a read?
Yeah, so guys that photos and everything.
Alright, cool. Alright, so let's go to the next one. So you're asking these questions, right? So here's some call to actions about making some choices. So these are the suggestions. So you've asked these questions, now try and make yourself some commitments. Alright, okay. So this is an interesting fact. Almost 30% of our AC industry, only 30% reports that they have confidence in data. So how do we build confidence in data or digital well-being? By constantly looking for the truth. Right? Okay, so here's 3 call to actions. Commitment number 1, choose one thing, own one thing. Right? It could be anything. It could be a standard, or a workflow, or a template, or an execution plan, or a LiDAR scanning, or whatever. The point is, choose one thing to commit to and understand it as well as you can. Right? And then document your learnings. Being able to come back and document something to relearn or unlearn and recalibrate is invaluable too. Right? But become a master. Right? We'll talk about why, not a lot of things, in the next segment. Commit to number 2, right? Practice digital minimalism in your workflow. Right? Practice. Don't think you just learn something. Practice means really working at it, making sure it actually works, getting more fit at this. Right? And workflow is very important. Tools, processes, all these things supplement how you are most effective in a workflow. Right? Remove everything doesn't serve you a clear outcome. Invest in the ones that give you energy. And then number 3, a call to action which you can do at your first job is make your velocity visible. Right? Create reusable artifacts. You don't really need to. But create a checklist, an automated thing, a parameter set that fuels some kind of thinking in your Revit or let's say in your clash detection software. Name it, version it, share it. Right. So do commitments you can look out for when you go to your first job.
And I can kind of touch to that is a lot of clients are currently looking just to fill seats. But if you can actually showcase that you're solving a problem for them, you're higher up the higher list than some other people with a standard CVM portfolio. Okay. So generally speaking, the poster is a lie. The practice tells the truth. So what you see guys tell you how they are on the LinkedIn and the Instagram platforms and those kind of things, the social media platforms, is the artifact. It's not necessarily the truth. What we're trying to achieve is that basic assumptions. And your job is kind of to elicit that out of the digital practice. If the digital practice and the firms are aligned in all those setups, it'll become quite easy for them to show it and you can validate it quite easily.
And you can actually ask these questions, right? A good interview plays well when you understand that market and firm and what you want from them. But it is also part of your, what would you say, rights to want to know where they're going and how you can fit in, especially culture, right? Especially in a big corporate, from an insider's perspective, culture is an important thing, right? You're going to have tension, you're going to have conflict, but if the culture is right, you can deal with it.
Okay, so 3 things that we kind of covered today. The digital practice is the operational tech environment, not the IT environment. So if anyone tells you, do you know IT? Just say no. But do you know your operational technologies? Yes. Choose a firm by choosing the market. So your market is the firms you want to work with. And then there's different things, small and deep and all those kind of things ties to that. And then try and read the culture before you sign, right? Is it intentional? Does it have velocity? Does it manage what it absorbs? Does it share? You know, these are the types of questions to get to the truth, because this is your career. But this is also how you can keep on progressing. You know, the change of technologies every 5 years is actually less these days. But if you can't create your own velocity, you're always just going to answer on speed, and you're going to have the same problem. Then you're going to do it faster. You're going to have the same problem. You're going to solve it faster, but you're not actually improving on it.
Yeah, interesting as well, right? There's a difference between a job and a career path. So yeah, think about that, right? Job hunting, job jumping versus building a career. Also different thinking. All right, so now we've got these three things that we did, right? These are the core principles of this presentation. So let's align these with your digital evolution, right? So the difference between this and the commitments is more grounded in reality, right? Align these things for yourself. In the first 2 or 3 years of your professional career, you will not be a master, right? You're going to integrate, you're going to absorb, you're going to exploit, you're going to think you know everything, and by the end of the day, all your basic assumptions are null and void, and you only remain with the artifacts, right? That is the reality. What you get to the tertiary level versus reality. That's what you need to now explore. All right, so what does it mean for you, right? Don't master something. Focus on the things that generate energy and impact for you. Those will be clear indicators of where you're going to steer your digital well-being. Number 2, like we already mentioned, adopt one standard, not a system, not a process, a standard. Right? What does a standard tell you? It's a framework, it compiles a lot of things, gives you a playground to have knowledge, but also then makes certain decisions based on your skill set and what you can do with knowledge. A standard. Right? Understand it so well that you can explain why it exists, not how you use it, why does it exist. Why do we have a BIM execution plan? Why do we have ISO 19650 information frameworks? Why do we have Toby parameters? Not how to reason, why, right? And then the third thing is, how do we align your digital evolution with further, is cultivate that philosophy. Intentional practice, right? So those 4 core cultural notes, cultivate that, right? Cultivation is the same as practice. You have to water, you have to nurture to make sure you're getting the right nourishment, right? Create that template, name that thing, generate fees or assets.
So choose the firm by choosing the market, then read the culture before you sign.
Posters don't lie. Practice tells.
We rehearsed that. Cool. Thank you, everyone.